Welcome back, everyone. I am Winter, and this time I'm going to bring you one of the WCS games I haven't even seen yet, even though it's from the last season. It's going to be the WCS Round of 4, a match between Polt and Taeja, which took place in WCS America near the end of the last season. Hopefully you haven't seen it as well. I haven't seen this game yet, but I found the replays from the WCS site where you can download every replay from WCS Season 1 and 2, and I've been kind of going through them. For those of you who have seen this game, feel free to move to a game you haven't seen, or maybe, I don't know, enjoy my interpretation of it or relive the moments. Hopefully there are some good ones. I didn't actually check the game time. I don't like to check the game time of the game before I click on it. I just try to see which match is first and then go and watch it. But let's just jump into the game now without talking more about the replay. In the bottom left-hand corner, a Terran player, my favorite player in the entire world, wearing the blue SCVs. It's going to be CMPolt. His opponent, in the top right, hailing from Team Liquid, one of the best Terrans in the entire world, recently remaking a stand in, I believe it was, oh wow, he just recently won DreamHack Bucharest, okay? After this game was played, but before it was cast by me, DreamHack Bucharest was claimed by Taeja, and of course last summer, the summer of Taeja, he took a lot of games in a row, a lot of tournaments in a row, mind you. Team leagues and everything, and it looks like he's back on track to do that. But in this game, it looks like both players on Neoplanet S will be opening up with a 1-Rax. Will this be an expand? Will this be extra Raxes? It looks like Polt has already shown a little bit of his hand here, getting the gas geyser right after the barracks, maybe indicating he wants to go for a Reaper first, or possibly into factory tech before he decides to expand. You don't see too many 1-base all-ins nowadays in TVT. Though either one of these players has been known to cheese on occasion if it thinks it'll get them the win. And in this best of 5, they will do whatever it takes to move on. Now Taeja making sure he walls off with the supply depot there. You can just make a supply depot to make sure no scouting SCVs get in. To see he took his gas a little bit later, this might indicate he wants to go for a later reactor Hellion play, maybe get 3 or 4 Marines out right off the bat. But both players starting off with the Marine. Polt gonna have the Marine as well as Taeja, so we will most likely see a factory out of either player, because otherwise there's no real way to spend their gas except by building a reactor, which also is not very uncommon at this point in the game on the barracks. Alright. Looks like Taeja sending his Marine right out front to deny scouting, but Polt has not yet scouted across the map. Instead, he's been content with not scouting and instead just doing his build. Getting the factory. Will he make a reactor after this? He will have the gas after 1 more Marine. Or will we go into Cloak Banshees or some sort of siege tank play? The second gas might indicate that he wants to go for Cloak Banshees. He can still go for those siege tanks if he wants to, but getting that gas before, say, 20-22 supply, like Polt has done after a 13 gas, means he wants to get aggressive with high-tech units. It's up to Taeja to scout that. And notice, I want to point something out. For Taeja, let's take a look here. If we look at Taeja's vision, when you go up the ramp, you can actually see the edge of that gas geyser. So you go all the way up the ramp, you can't see the other gas geyser, so he has no idea that Polt is going for that early gas a little bit quicker than he did. And he saw a Marine first, so there's no indication. Polt could be 1-Rax expanding for all Taeja knows, but Polt very much so not 1-Rax expanding. As he gets the factory, he adds on the starport, and looks to be going straight into Cloak Banshees, unless, of course, he does some sort of drop. We'll have to see what comes out of this. But Taeja, on the other hand, taking the expansion, adding on a factory of his own, and might be looking for either a Viking. I would doubt a medevac with this low Marine count. Either a Viking, siege tanks. We'll have to see. If he adds another gas on, he might be going for Cloak Banshees, but going for Cloak Banshees after a quick expansion is a little bit of a risky move. But he might even be doing it now, taking that second gas, and he will have enough gas in order to get the Banshee out right off the bat after his tech lab finishes, well, his starport finishes and moves to a tech lab. But Polt, showing his hand, is going to be going for the cloak, adding on Widow Mines behind it. No indications of expansion quite yet, but he's starting to bank up a little bit of money. So we'll see if he wants to expand after he starts to put his pressure on with the Widow Mines. Now, Polt, being the smart guy he is, putting his Marines exactly where they'll always be useful. If there was a Banshee coming in, he knows his Banshee is going to be flying out sometime soon. He wants to have his Marines in position. He wants to know, he wants to be able to deal with whatever's coming at him ASAPly. But this is going to move his Marines out of position in order to deal with the scouting SCV. Polt might be expanding, and Taeja will not see this, but Taeja will see absolutely everything. Look at his vision if he moves up a little bit further. Wait, can he actually not see the starport? He doesn't see the starport, but Taeja has to know. Taeja has to know. And also, the SCV for Polt gets all the way in. Let's look at Polt's vision here. When he saw absolutely everything. He doesn't know where the factory is, but seeing the Tech Lab Starport is a dead giveaway for Cloak Banshees on either side. So we'll have to see. Right now, Workers Guild tab looking at 1-to-1. See how many kills these Banshees can get. Polt going to be coming in first with his Banshee, picking off the first SCV from the expansion. He is supply block though with his depot pretty far away, so he can't produce any more units. And Taeja starting to pull ahead in the supply until he can start to take some of these out. Pops the cloak, and we'll be able to take out 1 or 2 Marines here and try to bait out a scan from Taeja, but Taeja knows Polt is unlikely to actually lose this Banshee to Marines with just a scan, so kind of biding his time, trying to keep that Banshee away for as long as possible, but eating a few Marine hits in the process. And the turret finishes, allowing him a little bit of vision there, a little bit of detection on the Banshee. And don't forget, at the same time, Taeja coming around with his Banshee, going to move it in, try to counteract some of the damage he's been taking. And Polt, little walking on ice here with this Banshee a little bit, as the Marines are so close and there are scans in play. The Banshee just doing nothing. Polt is successfully distracting Taeja, and it's killing so many Marines. This Banshee looking at 11 kills now, every single one of them Marines, except for a handful of SCVs. But the cloak runs out, and will Taeja be able to finish it? No! One more hit and this Banshee goes down, but instead it will not be taken out, and Polt will go home and repair it, unless there's something to intercept it. There's just nothing on the field. This Banshee being ridiculously cost-effective, while Taeja's Banshee getting repelled almost instantly by the Raven and Marine combination. Now, Polt pulling back with his Banshee. Supplies pretty even. Looking at the worker count, we see Taeja in a lead with that early expansion. He did not lose really many SCVs to the Banshee. Only 4 killed so far, so only 3 kills to the Banshee. The rest were those Marines, of which we can see in the Army Supply tab, 29 to 18. But if Polt doesn't do anything with it sometime soon, Taeja will catch up in supply. When you have more workers, you have more income, and more income translates into a bigger army. Unless, of course, you want to expand, taking that third base. Taeja choosing to do that, but this might put him in a tough spot against Polt, who now has 2 siege tanks onto the field. Looking at the units tab, we see only 1 siege tank for Taeja and a handful of Marines, the Marine count being doubled by Polt, who's looking at 14 for himself. The army supply is 31 to 22. Taeja does have a Marine to scout this, but that will cut into his army as well. The siege tank is not positioned on the high ground either, but Taeja will have a second siege tank coming out of the second. He should position on the high ground to get that position where he can deal with his opponent's siege tanks, but of course if Polt comes in from this side, he might use the Vikings and the Ravens to force his way forward. He has the Widowmine as well if he wants to use it, but Polt knows exactly what he's up against. He sees the siege tanks. That's almost an unassailable position. He might set up a contain outside. He might just go home. But the Seeker Missile going to be used on the TD tank. 2 of them might be able to one-shot it. Yes, indeed they will. Doing some damage to the other siege tank, getting a lot of value out of that Raven. But Polt's going to back up after executing that. The Banshee coming back in, racking up some more kills. 15, 16, and number 17. And will he actually force a scan? He sees the 3rd command center, and that's very important. Polt knowing his command center is a little bit slower, and his upgrade's going to be slower as well, as we see him just now starting engineering base, while Taeja already has started his +1 attack and armor. Taeja will also scan. Will he actually see the engineering base? He'll see 1. Seeing 1 engineering base is very important. He didn't see any turrets earlier with the Banshee. When you don't see turrets, I don't know if it really came to his mind, but when you don't see turrets, of course, they might not have an engineering base. And seeing that now, Taeja might be comfortable with this upgrade lead, and maybe just try to play defensive until he can get the army to contest Polts with better upgrades. I wouldn't be surprised with that earlier third base, with those earlier upgrades, but with the smaller army, that's something he chooses to do. Something else to note, the Raven providing detection on either side for the Widowmines. Where is Polt's Raven sitting at now? Looking at the units tab, find the Raven. Oh, just waiting to see if any more Banshees come in while Polt moves out. Moving out once again with a supply lead. 53 army supply to 46. Taeja's 1-1 upgrades have not kicked in quite yet as he takes his third base. We still have a Cloak Banshee out for Polt. It looks like it will be taken out here by the Vikings and the Raven combination. Get a scout of exactly where Taeja is set up, and Taeja has now finally taken the supply lead, but that's not really what's important in this situation. What is important is the army supply, as Polt going to try to force the issue, and even more importantly, the siege tank count. 5 siege tanks for Polt, 3 for Taeja, but 3 siege tanks sieged up are worth 5 unsieged. So if Taeja is set up in a good position, he will be able to repel this force. But will Taeja be able to get in position? He has a single SCV scouting, but the siege tanks won't be able to move in time to defend this. The SCV does go down. Polt scans, sees an opening, will take it, stims the Marines up. Will he be able to take down the orbital? That's what's important here. No siege tanks coming up to help this. There's no way for Taeja to really attack in. 2 Seeker missiles activate on the Marines. He needs to get them out of there. 1 Seeker missile being forced to roll away, but 1 will land, taking out the Marine, but not enough to repel Polt as he takes his own third base. Polt taking the advantages where he can. He started his 1-1. He's caught up almost all the way with Taeja. He didn't get the engineering base too slowly after him, and now getting his third base a little bit quicker, he might be able to even up the worker count. Yep, surpassing Taeja almost instantly as he gets that third base up, mining and producing SCVs. So Taeja now suffering a little bit of a supply deficit, a worker deficit, and actually an army supply deficit a little bit as well. But for all intents and purposes, this game is very even. Polt outmaneuvering Taeja at several points, but Taeja choosing a more economically focused build where he's stretched thinner. So if he hadn't been outmaneuvered, then Polt would be quite far behind. So we'll have to see how this plays out from this point. But it looks like both players maneuvering around the map. But Polt getting a little bit more map control with his superior siege tank count. Now has a sensor tower to discourage Taeja from doing any drops in this position. Also a supply depot served as something of a replacement sensor tower so he could see any drops coming from here until he set the sensor tower up. But now with it up, he'll feel very safe moving out along this left attack path, knowing that a base trade isn't quite as dangerous to him because he'll see it a lot quicker. Of course, having those Marines out is very important. Both players having them. And Taeja not yet having combat shields, but it will finish before the next engagement. Polt sliding along the bottom side. Both players very even now on supply. 7 siege tanks to 5 is the only real difference. An engagement happening. Taeja getting a better concave, but the siege tanks in the back obliterating Taeja's Marines. And Polt taking a very nice little skirmish there. Catching some medevacs as well as the Marines, and will be able to move up into a strong position, moving towards Taeja's base. Taeja has the sensor tower, but that's not the point he wants to be concerned in. Will Polt actually engage into this army? We see both players sieging up on either side. Taeja already entrenched, but Polt has just a few more units, sending in a single medevac drop, a single Marine, not going to be quite enough to discourage Taeja from moving in here. But will Polt back off, or will he try to take this position? He's trying to force himself into the natural. Taeja will activate one of his seeker missiles, the second one going to come up and actually take out a nice group of siege tanks here, or soften them up at least. With one of the siege tanks falling, that brings us even on the siege tank count, but Polt still ahead in the army supply. 98. Let's look at the Marine count. 44 to 40. Where's the supply lead? Oh, we see in the medevac count. It's going to be 6 to 3. That means Polt's army is just going to have a lot more staying power when he's taking an actual engagement. He can heal more of the siege tank damage. He can keep his Marines alive longer against Taeja's, and that might give him a little bit more map control to take a 4th base if he wants to in the near future. Polt does have that 4th base. It started. Will he land it at this side? It looks like he's indicating towards that. Otherwise, he probably would have built it here. Building another one here at the same time, though. And he will be out expanding Taeja at this rate because Taeja just about halfway done with his 4th CC. 69 to 65 SCVs, but Polt's probably going to stop SCV production. You don't want to have too many SCVs, otherwise your army is not big enough to take the engagements you want, especially when you max out before your opponent. Now, Taeja starting his 3-2, going to be starting 3-3. Polt needs to do the same. Let's see if he starts it instantly. Yes, he does, and that actually will. He's caught up on upgrades at this point. He's found those little gaps where Taeja has not kept up on his upgrades, and he's able to exploit them. And now Polt, with a supply lead, with an army supply, and a worker lead, might want to force an issue here. He might want to make sure that Taeja can never take a 4th base, contain him with siege tanks, make sure he never moves out, maybe even make some offensive sensor towers. But Polt not really moving out quite yet, though. He has large armies on either side. We see 5 siege tanks with this army, and splitting them evenly. 6 siege tanks over here, coming up with some more Marines, but Taeja very quickly approaching a max out, at which point he should be able to take Polt's army in a straight up fight, and it'll just come down to positioning and how each player decides to take an engagement. Polt sees the entire army in a single spot. He knows he can move in. He knows Taeja sees this, and he knows he'll move out of position. Will Polt move this army into position at the same time? But Taeja already smelling this, moving some of his army as well. Polt gets the first siege up, but there are a lot more siege tanks for Taeja. Both players have +1 siege tank weapons. Polt not really choosing to move yet. A single Marine will scout out that Polt has a 4th base. Supplies deadlocked, almost all the way at 200. And Polt just biding his time, waiting to see if Taeja will move into the siege tank fire. And if he comes up this blindly while he's trying to deal with the siege tanks on the top-hand side, then Taeja will be in for a large surprise, but now he scouted it. But Polt continually denying that 4th base. Look what he's doing here. He has a Marine here. He has an army over here and an army over here. There's no way Taeja's moving out and taking a 4th, while Polt is up and mining and will be gaining a bank. But Taeja gaining a pretty large bank at the same time, as well as executing a drop in towards the 3rd, where there are no defenses. The sensor tower will not keep these units out of your base. But Polt spending his bank now on extra command center so he can sacrifice some of his SCVs later. Polt splitting off a few Marines to deal with this, but at the same time, Taeja sees exactly what he needs to do. Drops on the siege tanks, moves in with his Marines. The siege tank fire is split between the drop, and it looks like Taeja will be cleaning this up. Taeja now taking the supply lead with a very smart engagement, drawing his opponent out of position with the drop, recognizing his opportunity, scanning at the perfect time, and establishing his 4th base in a dominating fashion. But Polt now taking another base. He has some extra command centers back at home. Both players, the production tab's almost even, with Taeja having a few more Marines in production. But either player, for all intents and purposes, they've now evened the game up once again. Both players on 4 bases. Both players have armies outside their opponent's bases, really threatening to do a lot of damage here, and Taeja cannot be broken. Polt is sitting out here with almost 50 supply, if not more than 50 supply of units, and hasn't really done anything with it. It's starting to become a little bit of a deadweight supply. If Taeja moves in and flanks this army, crushes it, and moves on to finish off a 4th base, I don't think Polt will be able to stop him. But of course, a few siege tanks and a large amount of Marines is going to be quite tough to break, but it looks like Taeja about to do so with these siege tanks moving up. The scan not going to be enough for Polt to take these out. Both players now at +2 with the siege tanks as they're moving forward on the right-hand side of the map. Polt finally withdrawing from the 3rd base. Does he actually want to take this fight? Polt moving in. He could get a lot of medevacs pitched off. Taeja picking them off before the Marine, and we'll get a huge win there. Though there is a planetary for Polt that will stop him from engaging any further. Looks like Taeja looking to take the middle base instead. Taeja slipping across the middle of the map up to the top side where the siege tanks and the planetary are not waiting. And will he find an opening? Polt has no siege tank. The siege tank count now 5 to 14. Polt's lost almost all his siege tanks. Taeja almost tripling him. And both players have even upgrades, almost even army supplies. We see Taeja 17 ahead and Polt going for a counterattack. And can he actually defend this base with just a planetary against siege tanks? I don't think that's actually possible. So many siege tank fire decimating and obliterating the Marines very quickly, but at the same time Polt moving in, trying to engage into siege tanks and into a planetary and being thrown back while Taeja has been able to take out the planetary of his opponent. Taeja now looking for the starport switch. Going to be looking for battlecruisers, knowing if Polt holds out much longer, he can break him with those battlecruisers now that he's made some big moves to take out the bases. But oh my god, do you hear all the scans going down now? As both players trying to find out exactly where they can engage and what they need to engage with. But the siege tanks are going to be the kicker here for Taeja. They're going to allow him to force his way up into this planetary. They are in range, and Polt just going to evacuate this base, load up into the medevacs, and see if he can get away. Taeja starting to extend his hold on this game now. He's taken out one of Polt's bases, a 2nd planetary soon to fall. Polt's going to be knocked back into the 3-base mode. He's not going to have the mining that Taeja has, though. Both players have something of a bank. Neither are maxed out and need to be spending that. These 3 drops being taken out almost instantly. A single drop will make its way through, but I don't think that medevac is going to be especially consequential as it gets gunned down by a single Marine. A minor distraction there and a big loss for Polt. See, reflected almost instantly in the supply tab. He loses 30 supply of units, and he's 30 supply down now from the max, and he can't replace that. He doesn't have unlimited money. He doesn't have those 2 planetaries he wanted to have just a few minutes ago because Taeja took him out. He's been stalled out here at Taeja's 4th base. There's no real way for him to break forward. There are siege tanks on the left, planetary on the right. There's no real breaking that right now, and it looks like Taeja about to make a move. Was that Polt scan or Taeja scan here? I'm looking. And that's Polt scan. He knows this army is sliding on the bottom. He's trying to move his way on the bottom, but Polt actually pincer him. This could be Polt's moment. Taeja trying to come up into a large concave. 2 seeker missiles going down right in the middle of the siege tanks. He's trying to find his way into a large concave of Polt siege tanks, and Polt has evened up the siege tank count. We're looking at 13 to 12, and Taeja, this might not be the best engagement for him, while Polt maneuvering for position and is maxed out once again. He's retaken another base. Taeja taking the base in the middle, but suddenly Polt looking in a decent position as Taeja finds his army in a less than ideal spot. And now Polt gonna move in. He sees the unsiege, instantly stims in. That is a planetary though, and he might not want to engage that with just Marines, and he finds that out just now. Taeja taking the opportunity to move forward, but will Polt pull back and decide to crush this, or will he press forward with this force that's kind of stranded now with all these siege tanks? A little bit of a standoff between both players will be broken as Polt takes out the 4th. And suddenly Taeja back to 4 bases, while Polt has expanded his lead to having 4 fresh bases. Well, no SCVs here is what we're looking at, and it looks like a seeker missile went up somewhere. Taeja was forced to withdraw. Polt only 1 kill on this Raven, but it has been it has been so amazingly useful throughout the game. There's been so much utility. He's forced so many unsieges and gotten so much position out of this Raven. It's been so worth the cost ever since it was taking out those close Banshees almost 20 minutes ago. And now Polt outside the siege tank vision range. Taeja trying to move in from one side, Polt moving in from another. Who will take the better engagement? Both players deciding they don't want to press in any further against the carnage being dealt out by the siege tank. But here comes Taeja coming in from the top. A few siege tanks in the front for Polt might be enough to hold this off, and it looks like Polt will make a stand. Taeja sees the siege up, but so many more reinforcements coming in for Polt. Only 2 siege tanks. The orbital will lift. So much carnage had happened on the top. More carnage is going to happen on the left, and it looks like the orbital will fall. Taeja does not have many to replace it, and suddenly Taeja has dropped in supply. We're looking at 115 to 174. Polt has forced his way into a massive lead here. Taeja's mistake trying to move up, getting stalled out at a position where he could only get on fight into a concave, looks to be a wrong one now, as Polt exploiting it, getting up to 187 to 117 supply. Taeja starting to run out of money, while Polt is starting to roll in it as he takes another base. That'll make 5. Even though 2 of his are mined out, the same is happening for Taeja. And now the final standoff. This army for Taeja just looking a little bit pathetic when you compare how many siege tanks, how many marines, and how many medevacs Polt still has at home. 194 to 123. Army supplies almost double in Polt's favor. A double drop trying to come up to maybe find a way to get his way back into this game. And I don't think Polt has scouted this quite yet, but he already has units in position, knowing the exact threats that Taeja could place on him at this point. Another base trying to be landed. This base is just absolutely not going to happen. Polt has made sure of that. And engagement happy on this side will not really result in too much fighting happening. But no, actually Taeja going to swing in. Maybe snipe off a couple medevacs and take a few marines for his trouble. Not a game-winning move, but we'll start to draw him back, give him the position he needs. But he forced a couple siege tanks on siege, and now Polt will be rolling through with 17 siege tanks here. And they have +3 upgrades and so many marines. Getting destroyed, knocking Taeja back under 100 supply, where he just barely scrapes over with another production cycle. The unsiege, I don't think that's the right call here from Taeja, but he has to do something, and that something is getting every single last one of his marines taken out, and that's going to be a GG. Taeja has left the game. Polt has commanded his way to another beautiful victory in a Marine Tank TVT. Well played by Polt, and he'll move on to game number 2 with a 1-0 lead. Thanks for watching. I've been WinterStarcraft. Make sure to like, subscribe, give me some comments and criticism on my casting. I'm just trying to practice. And I hope you tune in for some more of the cast or my live stream over at twitch.tv/ZLFreebird. Thanks for watching. And I'll see you next time.